Highlights of the annual Toyota Rust Winter 4x4 Jamboree is proudly brought to you by Toyota South Africa. It's the family event that has everything: mud, sweat and dust, laughter and no doubt also danger. It's the largest event of its kind on the South African off-road calendar, and it's the one that every 4x4 enthusiast wants to participate in, let alone dreaming of winning it. Welcome to the 2018 version of the Toyota Rust Winter 4x4 Jamboree. Once again, this now iconic event took place over the April long weekend. The well-known Rust Winter campsite under the thorn trees around 70 kilometers north of Pretoria played host to the 27th running of this event in partnership with South Africa's largest car manufacturer and most certainly the market leader, especially when it comes to 4x4s or off-roaders. For Toyota South Africa, the arrangement with the organising committee of the 4x4 ATV Club of South Africa is nothing short of perfect.
It's been going on for 27 years, and we hope it's going to be another good 27 years coming, because it's so unique Toyota, quite frankly. When you look at all the vehicles that customers use, majority are Toyotas, and we're very proud of that.
Toyota South Africa Motors Vice President of Sales and Dealer Network, Leon Tron, was also quick to point out that although the event is known as the Toyota 4x4 Jamboree, the event welcomes owners and families of all makes of off-roaders.
You know, we welcome anybody who drives a 4x4. This is not just a Toyota event, it's an event for everybody. And if you want to bring our harshest competitors to this event, we would absolutely welcome that.
Having said that, he was also quick to point out that more than 50% of the 176 vehicles that would participate in 2018 are in fact Toyotas.
We see ourselves as one of the major players in the 4x4 field. We have various products that you can see around here, which is Hilux, Fortuner, Land Cruiser, especially the Prados. We saw a couple of Prados. So yes, we're very proud of this, and we are not market leaders for nothing. It's a proud heritage of ours.
And to absolutely ensure that the odds are even more in their favour, Toyota South Africa, as always, invited a number of specialist journalists and motoring scribes from both print and electronic media to not only attend the event, but to also participate in a fleet of stock standard Toyota off-roaders that included a few Hilux Buckies, Fortuners and brand new Prados. So the Jamboree is probably the biggest event of its kind, with 176 entries, meaning a total of 352 drivers and navigators, and a lot more if you add family and kids. So clearly it's a lot of people that chose to spend their long weekend in the bush near Bella Bella to compete against each other. So why do they do it?
Well, the obstacles for first. Yeah, it's just awesome. It's a nice atmosphere.
Really enjoying the event. It's a lovely family atmosphere. The kids love the games on the mountain routes, and yeah, that's why we're here.
It's coming out into the bush as a family, and a 4x4 is part of it, and that makes it awesome, beautiful, lekker, blessed.
So, it's fun, it's friendly and it's with family. But the true reasons 4x4 enthusiasts come here each year is this: the place is 4x4 heaven, or it could be hell. The Gymkhana course, as well as the nearby mountain route, provide a real test and challenge for both man and machine. Here is 4x4 ATV Club Chairman and Clerk of the course, Dirk van Wyk, with an explanation of the proceedings.
The Toyota Rust Winter Jamboree consists of two sections. The Saturday Gymkhana event consisting of 10 different obstacles. In these obstacles, the competitor must complete some tasks while still driving his vehicle over difficult terrain. Then on the Sunday, we have a mountain route. The mountain route consists of 2 loops that are completed in the mountain. There are different obstacles, and at each obstacle we have a number of marshals that will guide people through that. The focus is on family entertainment, family events, while still using a family vehicle. Not a modified vehicle necessarily, but a vehicle that everybody on the street can own.
Last order of business, scrutineering to ensure that each and every off-roader vehicle conform to the organizer's safety regulations.
We just check a couple of points on the vehicles, like lights, roadworthiness, spare wheels, spare wheel locks, body and engine mountings, and steering equipment.
With scrutineering successfully completed and campfires burning high, it was time to formulate strategies and to get some rest before the competition would start in earnest early the next morning. Join us after the break for all the dirty action from the Gymkhana part of the 2018 Toyota Rustewinter 4x4 Jamboree. Welcome back, and this was it, the start of the Toyota Rustewinter 4x4 Jamboree. And what an early start it was. Fortunately for the many crews, they didn't have to travel very far, as the entire Gymkhana and obstacle course is housed on the club's grounds, just a stone's throw away from the campsite. Here it was time to get to grips with the various obstacles that made up the Gymkhana section and day one of the event.
The Gymkhana obstacles requires a lot of attention. We spend a lot of time developing new challenges every year. The most famous one of them remains the mud sleigh, where people like to be pulled through mud. It's a real test for any relationship. Then the other obstacles, whilst people are driving, they may require to be some other work or a task. Whilst driving over an obstacle twister.
Without wasting any more time, let's move on to the far side of the Gymkhana area and the home of Obstacle 1.
You're going to tow a mud sleigh through a circuit, through a mud hole, and come back to your starting point. On the route, you're going to try and put 4 balls into 4 cones. When you finish the course, you have 1 minute to complete a wheelbarrow race.
Yes, you heard right. An adult human being, also known as the navigator or co-driver of each competing vehicle, would then be strapped into a very wet and muddy steel sled. After donning a very sexy pair of safety goggles and whatever other original outfit some of them managed to come up with, they are then hooked onto the back of the vehicle. This is where the organizer's strange sense of humor starts to come into play. It is each man's goal to get his steed to the end of the obstacle in the shortest time possible, or so they say. We think there's more to it.
Oh, I've been waiting like 3 years for this, man. What do you mean? It's gonna be fun.
Funny how in pretty much all the cases it was the husband that tried his very best not to cover his beloved wife in thick mud, or not.
Weet jy wat die ergste nie, die stop op die modder.
Ja, moet je ook daar.
We are happy to report that all marriages and friendships were still semi-intact following the famous Rustewinter mud bath. Well, as far as we know anyway. And most competitors survived to fight another day. And speaking of which, they didn't have much time as 9 more obstacles awaited the eager crews. Obstacle 2 then, not far from where the tractor driver was having a very busy day recovering 4x4s of all shapes and sizes out of the mud hole.
Obstacle number 2 is a figure of 8, and they've got 4 balls that they have to put on top of poles. It's either the driver or the passenger, and then they go through it, and they have to do it in 4 minutes.
This obstacle still had both dust and mud. It was certainly a lot cleaner than the first one, as both driver and co-driver could at least stay inside their vehicles. Well, sort of anyway. This really depended on both the driver's driving skills as well as the navigator's ability to guide him or her to get as close to those tennis balls as possible, but without touching the plastic pipes or the bunting that demarcated the borders of the obstacle. And as with all or most of the other obstacles, the stopwatch is always involved, while the driver and his machine had to cope with inclines, slopes, axle twisters and more mud. Successfully reaching the finish did not mean the end of the obstacle though. With your head firmly stuck between a rock and a hard place, a team member was required to propel a small round object across the ground by only using spitting power. We are also happy to report that the object was in fact a sugary sweet and not something that came out of a kudu. Gladly, it was time to move on.
Go through the mud or eat cookies. And then they eat cookies, otherwise they're going to stuck in the mud and we'll recover that.
So there was an option, to take the route through the mud hole or to miss the mud and take the punishment instead. The penalty for not taking on the deep mud didn't look too severe as far as we were concerned, but apparently it is very hard to eat 2 dry Marie biscuits and then whistle, all within 60 seconds. Guess we'll have to try it ourselves next time.
Yes, sorry.
And so a group of more than 170 off-road vehicles with their crews worked their way through the Gymkhana and obstacle course of the 2018 Toyota Rus de Winter 4x4 Jamboree. As one can imagine, the organizers made use of a shotgun start approach to ensure that all 170 vehicles will have sufficient time to complete all 10 obstacles before the sunset. So the ATV Club's Gymkhana course was one busy place to say the least. All the obstacles were unique in one way, yet very similar in another. The common factor was that each obstacle was designed to really test the driver's skills and precision, while at the same time providing the vehicle with a tough test as well. Each obstacle consisted of severe slopes, inclines and declines, axle twisters, and in most cases also muddy sections. On top of that, each obstacle also presented a different kind of challenge or task for either the navigator or both driver and navigator.
While you're driving, the co-driver must build a puzzle. They've got a rope that they have to plait.
They will go right down the obstacle through the river.
Don't touch banners, don't roll back, don't stall. 3 minutes to complete the course.
The navigator has to work with a metal rod with a ring on, and they're not allowed to touch the wire.
At the end of the course is a box there where you got to match bolts and nuts.
And it's a speed section, so it all goes about starting the clock and stopping the clock.
Regardless of what the task at each obstacle was, the rules were always pretty much the same. You lose points for touching the banners, for rolling back, for standing still for longer than a few seconds, and for not completing the extra task. Or even worse, you can get disqualified for not wearing a seatbelt, getting outside assistance, or failing to complete the obstacle in the time allowed. So the co-drivers continued to plait ropes and build puzzles while the drivers and vehicles negotiated their way around the tricky obstacles. And speaking of tricky, the task at Obstacle 7 proved to be extremely tricky. We suggest that prospective participants sharpen up on their knowledge of parts like release bearings, distributor caps, oil coolers, voltage regulators and starter solenoids.
Injector?
Sure.
And then there was Obstacle 10, the famed time trial. As the name suggests, the objective was simply to cover a short course in the fastest time possible, without falling over and without allowing one of the many large and nearby trees to suddenly halt your progress. As the day progressed, the basic rules of obstacle and off-road driving became clear for everyone to see. Slowly does it, but not too slow, or rather as slow as possible but as fast as necessary. And it remains impressive to see just how capable a good off-roader can be, especially in the right hands. To make them even more capable, most competitive vehicles were modified, some just a little, while others have gone all out. The principles are simple, and it's all about approach, breakover and departure angles combined with suspension travel and axle articulation. An easy modification is to fit a replacement bumper, combined with raised suspension and of course off-road or all-terrain tires for that extra and much needed grip. Having said that, it doesn't mean that a standard 4x4 is not capable. Quite the contrary, in fact. This was successfully proven by the group of motoring scribes who tackled the Gymkhana in a fleet of stock standard Hilux Bakkies, Prados and Fortuners. This is what Wiele Twee Wielers Carl Kritzinger had to say.
I drove the 2.4 Fortuner Auto, and I must be honest with you, last year we had the privilege of driving the 2.8, and this 2.4 amazed me. I mean, last night I had a bit of a upset stomach just worrying about this car and is it going to make it, but what a lovely vehicle, composed, it's got everything. It's a bit cheaper than the 2.8, and why not, a lovely toy.
Auto dealers Justin Jacobs' Steed was a brand new Prado VXL.
But this year seemed quite difficult, but luckily I had a new Prado to tackle everything with, which was great. I had my air-conditioned seat on and took everything with ease. It was good fun.
Marula Media's Brendan Staniforth also enjoyed the luxuries of a Prado.
The Prado managed all of them with very little effort. You didn't get to the end of the obstacle where you thought, now I've caused damage and I've broken the car. Even that, where you got to come out of the little riverbed and climb up that little brick wall, did perfectly fine, climbed out there one shot.
SA 4x4 writer Andrew Middleton was full of praise for his standard 2.8 GD6 Fortuner.
Because it does well, it's a capable vehicle. It's comes standard from the factory, capable. Stock standard with a diff lock, stock standard with low range and enough clearance to get through most of the obstacles. Some Bakkies might have a larger overhang at the front or the back and they'll struggle more, but Hilux as well.
The Limpopo sun was setting over the bushveld while the fires were burning at the Rustewinter campsite. The Gymkhana was done and dusted, but it was only the end of day one of the annual Toyota Rustewinter 4x4 Jamboree. Another off-road adventure awaited all the crews on day two. See you after the break. Welcome back to the 39th Rustewinter Jamboree and the 27th in succession with Toyota as the main sponsor. We're still in the bushveld of Limpopo, following the successful running of the Gymkhana event the day before, but proceedings were far from over. This was day two, the day that all the remaining drivers, co-drivers, friends, family and children would attempt the feared mountain route around 20 kilometers to the south of the campsite. The mountains were high, the valleys were deep and the obstacles were rougher and tougher than ever. And even so, the 4x4 fanatics were raring to go. The route was split into two separate loops with participants getting the option to tackle either one first. The mountain route is very scenic, but the obstacles were severe and designed to challenge both the drivers' driving skills as well as the limits of the 4x4 vehicles. Even so, standard capable off-roaders were able to cover the tricky route thanks to careful driving and concentration. And where it got really daunting, skilled and unselfish marshals were at hand to guide the participants along the way.
Okay.
Narrow mountain paths, rock-lined tracks, steps and drops, water crossings and mud. You name it, and the 2018 mountain route had it. Competitors and their passengers all commented on how scenic the route was, but they had very little time to enjoy the views as the course and the obstacles on it demanded every driver and navigator's full attention. It's a competition after all, which meant that participants were taking it seriously in an effort to score maximum points, or rather, not have points deducted. But that was only half the story of the mountain route. Besides the serious nature of the competition and the severity of some of the sections, the emphasis remained on family fun. And in typical Rustewinter fashion, the route provided a few additional challenges that had very little to do with off-road driving. Most of the participants survived the challenges as well as the tough mountain route, and once again it was time to head back to the peace and quiet of the Rustewinter campsite for the final time. It all started 3 days ago with scrutineering. After that, 176 vehicles completed the 10 obstacles at the famed Gymkhana course. And on the final day, the remaining participants conquered the feared mountain route. And now only one thing remained. It was time to tally up the scores and declare the various and overall winners. The annual Rustewinter 4x4 Jamboree prize giving is almost as famous as the event itself, and a great way to end the long weekend before participants could pack up camp and return home. One look at the attendance, as well as a glimpse of the variety of prizes put up by all the various sponsors, confirmed what a big event this really is. It also served as proof just how popular 4x4 driving and off-roading is. A number of crews, as well as a few lucky draw prize winners, were all rewarded for their efforts over the last few days by walking away with great prizes. But before we reveal who the category and overall winners were, let's take a quick look at Toyota's other big 4x4 and off-road event. The Toyota Atlantis Fun Day will once again take place in October this year in the beautiful white sand dunes near the town of Atlantis, just a few miles north of Cape Town. Member of the Atlantis Organizing Committee, Charles Kruger, was at hand to discuss the differences between Atlantis and Rustewinter.
No, it was a lot of fun. It's completely different to what we do in our event at Atlantis Dunes. The mud was tasty. I got a few mouthfuls going through that on that sled. So it was interesting.
What's more is that Toyota South Africa put up a great prize for the highest scoring Toyota owner here at Rustewinter. In the end, it was Ruan Delamain and navigator Johan Vosloo that will enjoy an all-expenses paid trip to Atlantis in October to compete in the annual Atlantis Fun Day, from behind the wheel of a Toyota, of course. So, something to look forward to indeed, but the big prize winners of the Toyota Rustewinter Jamboree still had to be announced. The team that scored the most points during Saturday's Gymkhana, the team that scored the most points during Sunday's mountain route, and then the big one, the overall winner when both the Gymkhana and mountain route scores were added. This couple clearly has a thing for mountain driving and the associated challenges, because 2017 mountain route winners husband and wife Christo and Karin van Wyk repeated their performance by once again topping the score sheets with a healthy margin of more than 30 points. The mountain, however, counted for half the points, as the 10 obstacles during Saturday's Gymkhana made up the rest. It was a close call, but consistency and near faultless driving sealed the deal for Ivan Venter and La Rochelle Schroeder. And now for the big one. The overall winners of the 2018 Toyota Rustewinter 4x4 Jamboree were the ones with the most points after the mountain route and Gymkhana points were added up. In the end, with a total points tally of 678 and with a margin of 24 points over their nearest rivals, it was Christo and wife Karin van Wyk who emerged victorious at Rustewinter. Let's hear from Karin.
Amazing! Uiteindelik. 12 jaar se probeerslag en ons het dit hierdie keer reg gekry. Yes!
So, exactly how did they do it?
Well, we did the sled through the mud, won that one, and just constant. If you even score 5 points, just keep it going.
And that was the end of the 39th overall Rustewinter 4x4 Jamboree, the 27th in association with Toyota, and made possible by the 4x4 ATV Club and all of their associated sponsors. We hope to see you all for the 40th edition of this famous event in 2019. Highlights of this year's Toyota Rustewinter 4x4 Jamboree were proudly presented by Toyota South Africa.